You know that they are all corruption with regards to all of that, but do you think that doing it that swiftly, don't you think it has its own effect?
The Buhari government has prepared the minds of Nigerians for this.
Have you ever prepared for it?
Yes.
Because that's the reason why you see now the queues are back again.
Yeah, because it's the Nigerian thing. The moment the announcement, in fact, it's not even a Nigerian thing. Anywhere globally, the moment you announce a certain policy, people will cash on that. Only yesterday, the group managing director of NPC said, look, no need to do panic. We have PMS, we have surplus. But you see, Nigerians, the Shylock thing, the Shylock in us, will now adjust pump price. And because we don't have people who enforce, so a lot of people should be in jail if at all we enforce certain rules. Just we don't have enforcement.
Abraham Lincoln, an American lawyer, politician, and statesman who served as the 16th president of the United States from 1861 until his assassination in 1865, once said, "Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power." Absolutely spot on. Our next quote is from Dwight Eisenhower, who is an American military officer and statesman who served as the 34th president of the United States from 1953 to 1961, once said, "Accomplishment will prove to be a journey, not a destination." Okay, now last one is from John F. Kennedy, American politician who served as the 35th president of the United States from 1961 until his assassination in 1963, once said, "Every accomplishment starts with the decision to try." Now let's see how that quote relates to what we'll be discussing today. Very warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN Televisions today here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabel Orji. Now first, we take this week in review, as it has really been a very busy one. And you recall that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu officially sworn in as the 16th president of Nigeria amid colorful events and festive mood at the Eagle Square. Now that's no longer news, right? Okay. So Tinubu, in his inaugural speech, touched on keynote policies and initiatives that will herald the start of his administration. And in case you missed that part of the show, let's bring you up to speed on the major takeaways from the president's speech. One, he talked about fuel subsidy, and as he said, in his words, fuel subsidy is gone. Now Tinubu has reaffirmed that the era of fuel subsidy is gone. He said, and quote, "We commend the decision of the outgoing administration in phasing out the petrol subsidy regime, which has increasingly favored the rich more than the poor. Subsidy can no longer justify its ever-increasing cost in the wake of drying resources." He continued to say that we shall instead rechannel the funds into better investment in public infrastructure, education, healthcare and jobs that will materially improve the lives of millions. Secondly, he talked about creation of jobs, prosperity for youth. Now, the president emphasized that his administration must create meaningful opportunities for our youth, saying, and quote, "We shall honor our campaign commitment of 1 million new jobs in the digital economy." He further stated that our government also shall work with the National Assembly to fashion an omnibus jobs and prosperity bill. This bill will give our administration the policy space to embark on labor-intensive infrastructure improvements, encourage light industry, and provide improved social services for the poor, elderly, and vulnerable. End of quote. Now, the third one he talked about was reforming the security doctrine. Now, Tinubu noted that the security shall be the top priority of his administration because neither prosperity nor justice can prevail amidst insecurity and violence. Now, he said, and quote, "To effectively tackle this menace, we shall reform both our security doctrine and its architecture. We shall invest more in our security personnel, and this means more than an increase in number. We shall provide better training, equipment, pay, and firepower." The fourth thing on the inaugural list speech rather was targets on higher GDP growth on the economy. Now, Tinubu said that he will target a higher GDP growth and significantly reduce unemployment. Yes, that's what he said. Now, he went on to say that we intend to accomplish this by taking the following steps. 1. Budget reform stimulating the economy without endangering inflation will be instituted. Second, industrial policy will utilize the full range of fiscal measures to promote domestic manufacturing and lessen import dependency. Third, electricity will become more accessible and affordable to businesses and homes alike. Power generation should nearly double and transmission and distribution networks improved. As he said that we encourage states to develop local sources as well. He went on to say that I have a message for our investors. Good message, right? He said, local and foreign investors, our government shall review all their complaints about multiple taxation and various anti-investment inhibitions. He went on to say that we shall ensure that investors and foreign businesses repatriate their hard-earned dividends and profits home. That's what he said. Now, the fifth part of the speech says talks about creation of agricultural hubs across nations. Now, President Tinubu said rural income shall be secured by commodity exchange boards, guaranteeing minimal prices for certain crops and animal products. Adding that a nationwide program for storage and other facilities to reduce spoilage and waste will be undertaken. He further stated that through these actions, food shall be made more abundant yet less costly. Farmers shall earn more while the average Nigerian pays less. Looks very juicy. Now, I'm not done yet. Now, the sixth part of the speech talks about thorough house cleaning on monetary policy. Now, according to the president, he said, and quote, this will direct funds away from arbitrage into meaningful investment in the plant, equipment, and jobs that power the real economy. He said, and quote, interest rate needs to be reduced to increase investment and consumer purchasing in ways that sustain the economy at a higher level. Whatever merit it had in concept, the currency swap was too harshly applied by the CBN given the number of unbanked Nigerians. The policy shall be reviewed. In the meantime, my administration will treat both currencies as legal tender. I'm sure some people are happy about that. Now wait until you hear the last one. Peace and stability will be his foreign policy objective. Now he said, and quote, as such, my primary foreign policy objective must be the peace and stability of the West African sub-region and African continent. We shall work with ECOWAS, the AU, and the willing partners in international community to end extant conflicts and resolve new ones. He further stated that as we contain threats to peace, we shall also retool our foreign policy to more actively lead the regional and continental quest for collective prosperity. So there you go, quite a number of them, but let's just start with these few takeaways with my guest Ali, Deputy Director Media and Publicity, Tinubu Shettima Presidential Campaign Council. After this time out, we will kickstart this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Conversation. Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from KAFTAN television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now we'll move straight to our conversation for today. And our guest is Ali. He is Deputy Director, Media and Publicity in the dissolved Tinubu Shettima Presidential Campaign Council. And he is also a member of PTC, that's the Presidential Transition Council. It's great to have you on the show again. Well,
it's good to be here.
It's been a long while.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. I think the last time you hosted me was around March, after
that's before
the president was declared winner. I think it should be around March. And then I gave you a recap of what had happened between the primaries and the eventual February 25th election. So let's see, 3 months now.
3 months now look like 3 years. Are you good?
Well, yeah.
You look like a politician now.
No. I don't. I may look like one, but I certainly don't feel like one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I'm yet to learn to speak through both sides of the mouth.
Interesting.
That's the whole mark of politicians.
All right, now let's start by congratulating you for all your wins with regards to how the election went and then the inauguration. It's like it's been a really serious journey for you, I'm sure. But then finally, the president your principal has been sworn in. So how far so far? Should we even call you? Okay, yes, you're still a member of the Presidential Campaign Council, but afterwards, what should we be referring to you? Are you going to be part of are you going to be put in another office?
Well, I think it's up to, but what I'm saying, what I will say is that I'm still a firm believer in the president, the brand new president. I'm a firm believer in his capacity to change the depressing narrative of the Nigerian state. I'm a firm believer in his ability to unite the country as a unifier, as a bridge builder. I'm a firm believer in his unique talent of identifying brilliant Nigerians to harness their skills, their intellectual resources towards a particular goal. Now, this may sound like a broken tune, but I always make this reference to his days as governor of Lagos State. His ability to identify talent, also to have a vision. Leaders, unlike managers, are people who have visions. They see far into the future and prepared for that future. And this actually defines the character and person of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as governor of Lagos State, because that is the reference point now. Normally, people, when you want to judge or you want to judge people, you look at their antecedents. And his antecedents actually speak volume. His antecedents speak volume of his capacity to change a bad or terrible, depressing narrative to a positive one. It has happened in Lagos. And Lagos, if you like, we all know, Lagos is a micro Nigeria. In Lagos, you find every single tendency that is Nigerian. In Lagos, you find everyone that is Nigerian. The good, the bad, and ugly is domiciled in Lagos. Lagos is a reflection of the diversity of Nigeria and the enormous potentials and richness of the Nigerian state. So if he, through his vision, and that vision translated into what is happening in Lagos now. Take, for instance, something that has long been overdue, which in itself is revolutionary, the Lagos Metro. It was under his watch as governor. It was conceived, but then that did not materialize until years later. But you see, even at that, the realization of the Lagos Metro, which some will argue that actually it wasn't his original idea, that Late Latif Jakande actually had that dream, but it was quashed by the return of the military in 1983, in the twilight of 1983. But when he came, he resurrected that project. Today, that project is a reality. It's there, and it has eased the congestion of Lagos. Lagos being a mega city, as it were. And in every mega cities of the world, you find the good, the bad, and the ugly. But he has managed to actually set the tone and the tune of the revolution or the reform in Lagos, which beyond the economic sphere, which the Lagos Metro encapsulates, is also the political sphere. Under his vision, you find that he also in a way influenced the dawn of his successors. He literally more or less had picked his successors, beginning with Babatunji Raji Fashola to Ambode and Nanti Sanwo-Olu, largely to his political vision, to his vision, economic vision. So that, as an example, also actually explains his ascendancy into the presidency of the nation. Because of that, because he's a man who plans, who sees ahead, as a leader, leaders, I always say leaders are visionaries. A leader, like Winston Churchill will say, is a man who can see tomorrow and tell exactly what will happen tomorrow. And at the same time, he's also that if what he's seen tomorrow or what he saw is coming tomorrow did not happen, we explain why It did not happen, according to Winston Churchill. The same Winston Churchill, again, if I may use refer to him again, said that, look, posterity, he can predict the future. He says, I can predict the future because I'm going to create it. So when you do the plans, when you plan, then you can say, by a certain period of time, this is what's going to happen. If you plan for education, if you plan for transportation, if you plan for housing now, then you can hazard a guess or two. In fact, you can predict that, look, by the year 2035, if you plan very well now, we have 12 years. You say by the year 2035, you want to make Abuja a smart city. Where everywhere there will be internet availability, there will be electricity. Then you know that by 2035, in 12 years, Abuja will be the place to be. So you can predict the future because you are going to create it. So I see President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in that mold. Someone who sees the future, that's why more than any politician in the country, his February 25th presidential victory was foretold because he planned it. He waited, he bided his time, he created other leaders, he lifted other people, and then like a wartime general, he knew every commander, where to place every commander given their military experience, now political experience, their reach, their capacity, and more importantly, he built bridges across the Niger. The first time someone from the southwest, mainstream politics, not a politician of convenience, not a politician propped up by a certain powerful institution like President Olusegun Obasanjo, former President Olusegun Obasanjo. We all know how Obasanjo came into office in 1999, which was a good thing because he was supported by his immediate retired military top brass. This is how he dislodged a clear favorite at the time in 1999. That is of blessed memory, Alex Ikweme. Alex Ikweme, the old guard in the MPN, actually that coalesced and formed the mega behemoth at the time, the People's Democratic Party, the PDP. The old guard in the MPN actually rallied around Alex Ikweme. But then no, the military top brass, led by the likes of General Babangida, they said, no, we want someone like Obasanjo. And Obasanjo at that time looked quite appealing, but the only snag was that, look, he had a military background and he has a tendency to be dictatorial. And they were right. What happened later when Obasanjo became president and commander-in-chief? There are certain things he said he took unilaterally, leveraging on the provisions of the 1999 Constitution as amended. And in most of the provisions of the 1999 Constitution, some of the provisions they were discretionary, and Obasanjo exploited that lacuna to the maximum. He used it, taking unilateral decisions. We all know some of the decisions he took, and which did not go down well with some people. But I will not go into that because that is history now. But I'm trying to create, to bring to the fore the political aura and sagacity of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who had, in fact, had to cross all kinds of unimaginable hurdles.
Okay, so I hear some people say that he's a consummate politician, that he's like the first who came from being an ex-governor and then senator. So that means he has been ready for that position, not like some who they were not ready, they were just handpicked and then dropped in there.
Yes. Yeah, of course. Look at his credentials. Okay, let's begin. He was a senator in the ill-fated Third Republic. He went to exile and fought for the entrenchment of democracy abroad. He went to exile. And then, along with other democratic elements, they formed Nadeko, and then from abroad, they were fighting the military. And that's why, to this moment, there were some elements, retired top military brass, I must say this, who are uncomfortable. One of them is President Obasanjo. I can go to town with that. Obasanjo has repeatedly expressed his reservation about the possibility of, well, the ascendancy is no longer a possibility. Now, the ascendancy of a certain Bola Ahmed Tinubu to the presidential, villa. But now it's history. And along with some other nameless, so to say, but Obasanjo is the face of that pressure group. And you all remember what happened, the letter he wrote at the beginning of the year, and largely not wanting a Bola Tinubu in the presidential villa. So, but when Nigerians say Tinubu is a consummate politician, is that right? Because he has, on the contrary, you see, people say, and I believe I share that very compelling argument, that with Asuwaju's ascendancy into the presidential cockpit now, whatever vestiges of military propensity in the villa is gone now.
Oh, really?
Yes, absolutely. Why? Because first, there was Obasanjo, and Obasanjo, knowing his propensity to control, he's a control freak. People have said this of him. He wants to control from insiders to outsiders. He like to micromanage and control people. RFI, in his Tell It All book, Accidental Public Servant, revealed how Obasanjo, using a frail Umaru Musa Yar'Adua as president, I'm quote from the book of RFI, Accidental Public Servant, that his third term agenda has been achieved because he's going to call the shots. But you see, even at that, he miscalculated, because Umaru Yar'Adua, of blessed memory, God rest his soul, was a fantastic leader. And when he assumed the reins of power, but for ill health, and that was deliberate, strategic on the part of Obasanjo.
Oh, wow.
According to RFI, in that book.
Okay, according to
You understand?
RFI.
In that book. You understand? The idea was to also, he may be an author, but calling the shots, he'll be, like people say, the master puppeteer. But Umar Yar'Adua had specific ideas about statecraft, about governance, about leadership, which, like a magician, literally put a rabbit from his magic hat and then began to turn things around. What he did? Simple. He respected the provisions of the Constitution. When you assume office in 2007, he acknowledged, look, the election that brought me to office, that was in itself revolutionary. Said the election that brought me to office were flawed and reforms will be taken. But he still said he won. Now, but few will have the grace to say that. At that time, when Yar'Adua was acknowledging that his election was flawed, Obasanjo was telling the world that the election was perfect, that there is no perfect election.
But now you're talking about Yar'Adua's, God bless his soul's, statement about the election. But I hear someone say that, okay, will your principal also say that, have that kind of statement and say that at some point there were some infractions during the election? So the election that brought him forth had some either infighting or corruption or anything about. Do you see that happening?
In the election?
From your election? Because now that's the more reason why others are in court.
About the election, the major difference between the election of 2023 and that of 2007. Maurice Iwu was the resident electoral commissioner. In fact, Maurice Iwu did not wait, the INEC under him did not wait till the entire nation's election results were collated before he announced Yar'Adua as president-elect. This much is there in history. If you check the books, if you open the gray pages of history, well, it's not too long ago, just how many years now? 16 years or thereabout. You find that of the required number of states, halfway into the election, Yar'Adua was returned elected. In some places, elections have not been conducted. Even there are people who still challenge that. In Rivers, for example, 100% turnout for the election. 2 million voters registered, 2 million cast their vote. Not a single one, no invalid is there. Is there in record. So, unlike this now, to 2023 election, which is still fresh in our memory, what happened? And then look at it even. I've never seen an election as unique as that of February 25th. Because all the permutations came short. All the permutations came short. For example, in the last 23 or so years, Bola Tinubu has never lost Lagos in presidential election. He lost Lagos. That's the first.
But most people tell you that you keep hearing that as the excuse, that we should just leave that part of it, that he saying that he lost in his own state.
No.
That's not enough to...
Okay. Let's go for the sake of argument. Let's keep Lagos aside. The national chairman of the party lost his state. How do you explain that?
So how do you explain all that happened in Lagos also?
No, I thought we were leaving Lagos aside.
Okay, let's talk about Rivers. How do you explain all that happened in Rivers?
Rivers?
Yes.
Did you say Rivers?
In Rivers?
Yeah, well, because in the Rivers we have a very recalcitrant former governor who was at loggerhead with his own political party, who said it in the open that he was not going to work for his political party. He was not going to work for the presidential candidate of the party. And given the enormous, look, governors, they literally control, they have the power of life and death in their hands. If a governor now sits, goes through the record of inmates, and then decide that those who are awaiting final approval for the hangman, he brings them out. He signed their death sentence, and that's the end of it. And if a governor so decides, and especially a powerful one for that matter, what makes a governor powerful? The resources at his disposal. After all, politics is about who controls what. The politics of resource allocation has always been the source of conflict. And Rivers is one of the most first advantaged states on the basis of derivation alone, and on the basis of internally generated revenue. So, and that's why up to the dying days of former governor of Rivers State, Wike, he was commissioning projects, he was initiating projects, and he never shied away. He is a man of, if you like, media razzmatazz. There you are. So you can now know the power. And look, he led a pack of 5 other governors. Some people say actually they were making some of these governors. There's one particular governor from the North Central who they said, look, there are governors. This is the governor, that is Wike, who turned another governor into his senior special assistant. It's a joke. As in the newsroom, it's all over the place. It's there in the internet that, look, one of his special assistants, and then you will think it's it's another governor who will be his bad boy.
All right.
You understand? So you can understand if overnight he turned the political fortunes of PDP away from the presidential candidate of the PDP.
But we're not talking about PDP alone there. We're still talking about Labour Party, SDP, and other parties.
Exactly. But because at the time he decided to support Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, that is it. He managed to vanquish the others. Because see, in the reality of our politics in this country is that, and this is, to me, is quite depressing, because it's not so much the size of, sometimes you find a lot of people doing politics of convenience fueled by resources. You know, you should know this as a reporter, as a journalist, as an anchor. A lot, elsewhere even, a lot, politics sometimes is, conviction is okay. Every now and again is being serviced, either materially or in kind. After all, it's all about you making me comfortable. Annabel, if you invited me the first time, I came and I'm shabbily treated. What I mean shabbily, I came here on my own volition because I want to share. And even if you ask me tough questions, depending on how you put them across, I'm not under any interrogation. You are here to being an uncle, tell the Nigerian people, then ask if you must. And you're asking some of the critical questions, for example, but in a very nice way, so to say. But then when you look at me and then you ask me a question that tomorrow I will not return. If you ask me tomorrow, I will not come. I'm just giving an example. So what I'm saying is sometimes, most times, is how you make people feel. Okay. And Wike, in a way, made the people of Rivers, especially politicians, some to make them very comfortable, and some to make them very uncomfortable.
Of God.
Yes. So that is it.
All right, now let's delve right into our main discussion for today. We'll be looking at some of the major points from the presidential inaugural speech in no particular order. Yeah. Now let's start with the one that had made almost all headlines buzzing, and everyone became an analyst overnight. Fuel subsidy is gone.
Yeah.
Some economists say that the removal of fuel subsidy may boomerang as such, but then it has to be done with caution. What exactly is the plan here? Because I'm quite sure that that speech must have been scrutinized by or from your department or by your departments. So what exactly is the plan in terms of that fuel subsidy? Because if you recall, immediately that statement was made, you see fuel queues everywhere, especially in Abuja, in Lagos.
Yeah, the announcement effect has taken toll. Anytime a leader makes policy pronouncement, the announcement effect alone, and that's why sometimes when you do that, you have to be very careful. You have to be very circumspect. But you see, those who know the trajectory of the president in the course of the campaign, is something that he has said. When he made the organized private sector, he said, look, if I'm elected president, I will remove the subsidy. But thankfully...
Well, I'm sure they were not expecting it to be that swift.
No, but you see, if you've been following what has happened in the last 6 months, the first subsidy regime was supposed to have ended by December. But the former government of Muhammadu Buhari actually given what some advisors say would be dire consequences. It will have a dire consequence on the Nigerian people. The now suspended provision of the Petroleum Industry Act, which made it very clear there will be no subsidy. But come to think of it, experts, and I'm not one, but my own pedestrian understanding of the whole thing is that, look, subsidy sooner or later will have to go. But this is the big caveat here now. If it goes, what happens? That, look, we cannot be taking crude for refining and then bringing it back, and then we are paying at competitive global prices, and then only for the government to subsidize. It doesn't make sense. I mean, it's just like when you have, I don't know the best analogy to that, but it doesn't make sense. Because you see, when you take crude out and then you refine it, there is a long value chain there. Chances are that it goes with the refining outside the shores of the country. There is kerosene, there is diesel, there is bitumen, there is hydrocarbon. I could go on. But the value chain is enormous. That is lost. So some people argue, and extended this further, that for you to finally withdraw subsidy, I'm saying the argument of economists, which most of the arguments are actually apologetic, because they are leaving the main issue. The main issue is that the subsidy regime itself is a fraud. Under Jonathan, it was exposed as fraudulent. If you recall, during the days of the PDP, an ad hoc committee was set up to probe the subsidy regime. That is how former chairman of the ad hoc committee was compromised by big-time importers or shippers of refined. Remember the former chairman of the ad hoc committee probing that, Farouk Law, and how he was compromised by a businessman when he was still stuffing dollars into his cap? He's in jail now because he was found culpable for actually doing what he was accused of doing. So that was then it was exposed. People would, what they normally do is that sometimes it's paper, it's mere paper. You bring, let's say, yes, I think I like this. It's kind of, yeah. Let's say Ali and Annabel now, we have an oil company. Then we have a lot of paperwork. We bring this paperwork that will show that we've bought a vessel with refined fuel of maybe 5 million liters. Mere paperwork, nothing like that. Sometimes Nigeria's crude will be taken and then it will be used as, brought back as imported refined fuel. That ad hoc committee actually brought this to the fore. And then
we know that they are all corruption with regards to all of that. But do you think that doing it that swiftly Don't you think
but you
it
see,
has
I think
its own effect
the
also?
Buhari government has prepared the minds of Nigerians for this.
Have you ever prepared for it?
Yes.
Because that's the reason why you see now the queues are back again.
Yeah, because it's the Nigerian thing. The moment the announcement, in fact, it's not even a Nigerian thing. Anywhere globally, the moment you announce a certain policy, people will cash on that. Only yesterday, the group managing director of NPC said, look, no need to do panic. We have PMS, we have surplus. But you see, Nigerians, the Shylock thing, the Shylock in us, will now adjust pump price. And because we don't have people who enforce, so a lot of people should be in jail if at all we enforce certain rules. Just we don't have enforcement. You understand?
Or check quality. A lot of things.
Check quality elsewhere. For example, if you go, even you go to UAE now, look at the way we abuse our roads. You will see truck meant not to weigh more than 3,000 liters of fuel, lifting 40,000 liters of fuel, putting a lot of pressure on our roads. And they're not weighed in. This is how they move from Lagos to Kano without being weighed in. If they are being weighed in from places to places, they'll be charged. They'll be asked to pay extra commensurate with the weight they carry. You see, which is illegal. Well, we don't do that. And then in no time the roads are ruined, destroyed eventually, and then we holler all the time. We complain. So what I'm saying now is Nigerians, most Nigerians who have been watching, knew that Tinubu will withdraw subsidy. Whether it's something that we have to go painfully. Now, come to think of it, those who benefit more from subsidy are not ordinary folks like you and I. So what do we do?
Just like he said in his speech that it's just for this.
It's for those guys at the top. It's for the rich.
Okay, so now we're actually due for a break, but before we go on that break, do you see this policy affecting you as a Nigerian?
Absolutely. I see it affecting me, but not to the extent. Because with all sense of modesty, I don't see myself as an ordinary, very ordinary, downtrodden Nigerian. I don't see myself. For example, I'll tell you this. I have long invested in renewable energy. So rarely I even bother about the off-grid, the national grid comes to me when it's there, it's there. If it's not there, I don't bother because I have long over time invested in renewable energy.
So how about those who cannot invest in this renewable energy? That's why
I'm saying, I am not saying I'm the typical ordinary downtrodden Nigeria. You understand?
So that means you're up there because you're either up there or you're down here.
No. The thing is, there are some of us who still pretend to be members of the middle class.
Which is not even there.
No, that is the thing I'm saying. Pretend. That's not the word. Pretend to be members of the middle class. Because, see, those are the very top. See, according to the German philosopher, I think Friedrich Nietzsche, what he said, look, we hang the small crooks, we gallant the big ones. This is what he said. So what I'm saying that the ordinary masses, because the workaday people, because transport fare will skyrocket. You understand?
You have to buy fuel for your I pass my neighbor generator.
And then those who think can have I pass my neighbor generator. If you want to pass your neighbor now, why don't you invest in renewable energy? Invest in solar. Because if you look at it, I'm just saying, if you look at it in the final analysis, it costs a lot more in the long run to run a journey, whether you pass your neighbor or you don't.
Let's go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll continue this conversation with Ali. I will see you after this time out. Join us again.
How does he check buccaneers? The same way he checked them in Lagos, and the same way he still controls. His influence extended from Lagos to the southwest and now nationwide.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you've actually missed out on a whole lot, but then you can still join in the conversation. As our guest on the show today is Ali. He is a member of the Presidential Transition Council. All right, so before we went on that break, we've actually talked about fuel subsidy. There are quite a number of items that he noted during the inaugural speech, but let's leave the fuel subsidy, even though we're not done with that, but let's leave it and just move on. And we also know that President Tinubu noted that security shall be the top priority of his administration. Now, tell us, what are the plans? Because I hear some people say that, okay, talk is cheap. We've heard former President Buhari made same statements or promises and even more. So what exactly is the blueprint here?
First, you see, let me also, before I go into what President Tinubu will do, acknowledge the investment, the heavy investment the former President Muhammadu Buhari made in improving the nation's security. A lot of people may not see it because up to this moment, what people look at are the glitches, the breaches, which over time has heightened the tail of insecurity. Not the insecurity itself. Of course, there are still breaches, enormous breaches. If you like, kidnapping, banditry is going on in the northwest. So that has not
been in Plateau.
Yeah, in the Plateau, depending on the location. But that is, I think, is an anti-climax if you compare it to the more depressing narrative before 2015, when we had instances where insurgent elements will annex Nigeria's territories, declare caliphates, and hoist foreign flags in these territories. That is now history, hopefully for the rest of my lifetime and yours and forever. We are hoping that. Now, what would Tinubu do differently? Tinubu has said it even in his blueprint, in his action plan, which you know called the renewed hope. That first, and what he said yesterday is not different from what is actually in his renewed hope agenda. That look, we're going to first to boost the numerical inadequacy of all arms of national security. And the police especially will be given a boost, numerical boost. Recruit more, train more, to give them the right doctrine to fight and to check banditry, insurgency, and whatever form of crimes. So the first year or so, second year, I'm trying to, the number will be boosted enormously. Then leverage on technology. Elsewhere, crime. Look at the war going on in Ukraine between Russia. Only overnight yesterday, so many aerial drones, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, when I listened to the BBC this morning, drone attacks were thwarted by the Ukrainian air defense system. What I'm telling you here is technology at work. But the Russians now, if they may say otherwise, you have instances where drones, if you remember how Soleimani was killed by the under whose watch, I think under give me his name, Trump. Soleimani was a respected Iranian general, but drones were sent to eliminate him far away. So technology here, when you, according to President Bola Tinubu, which he said he would deploy technology. Now, let me give you one example, which I find very admirable and worthy of being told to the rest of Nigerians. There is a young Nigerian who designed a heat-seeking drone that could work literally endlessly because it has a motor that recharges itself. So what it does is to, there are drones that can detect smoke, detect movement. Now this one it can detect heat. It can go into caves, under a rock, detect heat. In other words, this heat could be from animals, from rodents, from reptiles.
Oh wow!
How much more humans?
Okay.
But when you take that, maybe at the rudimentary stage now, you take that, and I'm sure if you go into the international market, you find technology like that. Use them to know exactly how to fight crime. You can use that to fight crime. These bandit elements, insurgent elements, like they say, they are not ghosts. They are people. So he said he will leverage on that. See, boost the numerical inadequacy, boost numerical strength. Second, leverage on technology. Third, training. given the right training and the doctrine. For the army, the doctrine. The Nigerian army, until recently, was not trained to fight insurgency. Because insurgency in itself, first, depending on how you look at it, the army is not equipped to deal with bandits. It's the police or the National Guard. The National Guard, look at what happened in the United States after Trump lost out and he incited his supporters. The National Guard, not the army, because the Constitution of the United States makes it clear it's illegal, it's prohibited to deploy the American armed forces for internal security, unless to protect or to take out enemy government. And that's it. The American people have never experienced war in their backyard.
But did you say that the Nigerian army were not trained to fight insurgency? Insurgency is a kind of war also. Yeah,
but you see, insurgency, you're dealing with internal elements. These are elements, they may be disgruntled, who want to declare. So what the doctrine is to fight, to protect the sovereignty, the territorial integrity of the nation. Fight an external enemy. You understand? An enemy that you know is defined. For example, you are fighting foreign power. That could be Benin Republic, that could be Chad, that could be Cameroon. I'm just giving an example. Or even in the days of the Civil War. The Civil War, when we fought it, the lines of engagement were clear. There was a part of the country that rebelled, that wanted to go, that declare independence. So that, you could say at that time, it was the enemy. But now you have an enemy that does not have a territory. Well, that is even terrorism. Terrorists don't have defined territory. What they do, they use violence to advance political causes. Now, for terrorism, like Boko Haram, they started as a terrorist group, they now move a step further. They become insurgents, wanting to declare a republic within a sovereign state. So, with time now, the Nigerian army, the doctrine gradually has been changed.
Okay.
But even at that, you understand, because the Nigerian army, the armed forces collectively, is one of the most dominant in the West African coast, the Nigerian military. It's just that because of this tactical inadequacy at a point, dealing with an insidious enemy, an enemy you don't know, an enemy that melts into the crowd, into the population, only for it to strike. Another enemy that is supported by some foreign elements. It has come to the fore that...
How are you so sure that there are foreign elements?
No, we've
also heard that there are still bad eggs in the basket.
Of course, that's why the thing has lingered. But because gradually, you see, it's simple. Even me as a reporter for myself. Now, what you do in is clear. It's classical. When you're dealing with an enemy, what you do, you first cut the supply line. If you cut the supply line, isolate them, then you quarantine them, and then you starve them of everything. Starve them of supplies. Then you are almost home and dry. Yes.
All right. So now let's move to other parts of what he said. He said, and quote, "We shall honor our campaign commitment of 1 million new jobs in digital economy." Now we recall former President Muhammadu Buhari promised to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty, but unfortunately 133 million Nigerians were plunged into multi-dimensional poverty. So how does he intend to honor that commitment of providing 1 million new jobs? Because at the moment, according to KPMG, the last report that was given, that Nigerian unemployment rate sits at 41%. Now, in that, I'm going to ask you two questions, and I'd like you to unbundle them in one breath because of our time. Now, that's one on the side, unemployment. Then the second is looking at the multi-taxation and enlarging tax net, according to what he said. Let's talk about that. I've actually heard people complain of how much they will bring Abuja, a Lagos lifestyle to Abuja in terms of, and even nationwide, in terms of increased tax. Someone was recently boasting on air and say that you now have so many tax force, or those tax boys now flood everywhere nationwide, where you have the Omoniles. They want to take your land away from you. They want to tax you for almost everything. Land grabbing will now be will surge at an unexplainable rates. So in that, what exactly is the plan?
Okay, let's begin with the 1 million jobs in digital economy, not really physical. I mean, look at it, young Nigerians, look at big techs, they call them fintechs. For example, now, some of these online malls, do you know how many jobs Jumia created when it came as an online store? So one, that is even, to me, that is with greater internet penetration, the digital economy is literally a gold mine waiting to be tapped. So if you give the right environment, you create the right environment, give it the right boost, in no time, the digital economy is a virgin territory young Nigerians should, at this point in time, capitalize on. You see it happening all the time. You see online malls, for example, they are there. I'm just giving you, well, I don't see myself, I'm not that old, but I see people below 40 capitalizing on that, making a lot of money out of that place. So if he says that creating the right environment with energy, which he says he plan to tackle headlong, then with greater internet penetration, and Nigeria is on the march to greater internet penetration. As it were now, the internet penetration nationwide, and that's why when people talk about Vivos at the point when they say, look, there are still blind spots. We have plus minus, I think, I don't know, about in the region of 60%, which is in itself is quite high. But some people said it's a lot less than that. But everywhere you look at, depending on the class, you see a lot more people are relying on smart devices to get their businesses done. Rarely people now go to physical shop. Young people, depending, when research is done now, I wish I had the time to do this research myself. The number of young people who go to physical markets compared to people above 45 who are still in a way old school. But young people, really, they do everything online, even if it's next door. They rather go through that process. If somebody would have it
delivered at home.
At home, because, and then that's why the people, some say they are becoming increasingly detached from other. Human contact is becoming minimal, increasingly minimal, depending on the age group. You understand? There are people now. Annabel will not come to the studio. I have I've been interviewed severally virtually. You understand? Virtually. You understand? So with that, that is even mine. The digital economy, if you know, as you know, now I'm not too sure now, but in this year's budget, non-oil sector accounted, and part of that non-oil sector is also the digital economy, the entertainment, the creative industry, telecom. They contributed substantially to the nation's GDP growth away from oil, non-oil sector. So yes, I see that doable. In fact, that's even a modest figure. It's a very modest figure, very modest. But we say just give the infrastructure. The moment you give the infrastructure, some of this will naturally come into play. Okay. Yes. So now the other one,
multiple taxation, land grabbing, and all.
No, but I think they're just raising. These fears are misplaced. Okay. Let me tell you why. In yesterday's speech, the president said, look, the CBN has no business having multiple exchange rates. That should be one single exchange rate. So why would there be multiple taxation? If the president from day one has said, look, the CBN should find a way to have a single exchange rate, which is something that economists of repute, like Sunusi Lamido of Sunusi, has run from pillar to post to kick against the idea of having multiple exchange rates, that you cannot plan, that this, in his word, rent economy. Some people will just sit because of their connection. These are people, influence peddlers. They get the CBN to give the concessionary rate. This has been happening from time immemorial, as far as I remember, from the days of former military president Babangida. It has happened. I've seen that. In 1992, there was the disparity between the Naira and the dollar exchange rate was in the black market or the parallel market. They want to give it a more harmless name than the black market. They say parallel market. In the parallel market, the dollar was exchanging 18 Naira. And in the official market, it was 9 Naira. Overnight, I will never forget. Because then I was business editor at the time, in 1992. I was business editor of a paper. Then it collapsed to 18 naira, single rate. That did not last. Abacha took over. Under Abacha, it was 22 naira official rate. The black market rate, it was 18 naira. And that remains stable for nearly 5 years. From the days of Obasanjo, the thing went gaga. It went haywire. So unless the moment
now it's like
now it's God have mercy on the rest of us. You're talking of 700 plus. You understand? So that is the dollar, one single dollar. 30 something years ago, well, nearly 40 years ago, in 1983, 82, the dollar was 75 kobo in 1981. 75 kobo, you know why? Because the Nigerian economy was based on production. We have the biggest economy on the continent, but this is an economy that cannot guarantee stable power supply. Why? Because it's the economy that operates at the level of consumption. Everybody consumes, including things that you don't need. Okay. And if you are hung on consumption, you are consuming much more than what you are producing, then you know doomsday is at hand. You understand? Okay. Yeah.
Because now you talked about power. He also talked about increasing power generation and fighting insecurity. But then how, in the midst of all of this travails, and then people, we already know that in the midst of all of this, you have people who will keep cashing out and wanting to make a living out of it. Either there's no electricity, or there's no power, or there's insecurity. A lot of people will definitely cash out of this. So how do you see President Tinubu having plans to deal with these saboteurs that will definitely surround him? Because like they say, in the midst of every 12 disciples, there's always a Judas.
Of course. And because he has navigated this road at the Zop National, how did he rescue Lagos from what befell it, post-military regime? The people, of course, there are always buccaneers everywhere, whether in Africa or in Australia. They are there. There is always a cabal. Make no mistake about it. But you see, President Tinubu is a city boy. He's not a rural boy. When you say that city boy thing, you know, there is a remarkable difference between a city and a rural boy. Well, unless we don't want to admit, it will take a city boy, it takes a city boy to know these loopholes and how to guard them. And that's why, politically speaking, he has been largely successful, because he has understudied a lot of people. And thankfully, he has several models to pick from. And he himself is a model of political sagacity, if you like. Now, talking about model, economic and otherwise, there is the Buhari model, there is the Jonathan model, there is the Eradu model, there's even the Obasanjo model for him to pick and choose. And there is Zoe model. So, how does he check buccaneers? The same way he checked them in Lagos. And the same way he still controls, his influence extended from Lagos to the southwest and now nationwide. And that's why people who actually supported him to make his presidential bid were not even from the southwest. The northern governors, if you remember, the former governors from the northern region, were the ones that insisted that power must shift. They didn't say who. The moment it was agreed in the APC power should shift to the south, who would be better placed than Bola Tinubu? Because he has worked, he has understudied, he has learned, and he has also built bridges. So I am absolutely positive that when people will cash out, certainly you can't run away. In the United States, there are people who are cashing out. That is the almighty United States. There are people who are very surreptitious. You understand? If you go to the old Russia before, in the days of Medvedev, I'm trying to go, who temporarily was the Russian president before Putin returned again. There are people who cashed out, who are still cashing out. But you see, Tinubu is not an accidental president.
All right.
He crosses the bridge, like I always say, before he gets there. And for this, that has been anticipated, and they will meet him where it matters most.
All right, so even as we begin to round up, he also stated that he will struck a reconciliatory mood by extending the olive branch again after he made that announcement. That's after the elections. So what is the plan, especially for a lot of aggrieved people who, with regards to the Muslim ticket, and then where will this reconciliation start from? Is it from the National Assembly leadership, or is it the security architecture, or various director of various MDAs? What's the plan? Because now you have some people already started arguing. Like I said, a lot of people became analysts overnight and started arguing with regards to the people that he has chosen to become his either media aid, and saying that, okay, they begin to check names and say, okay, I think it's tended towards a particular region. And then even when you have the vice president, it's tended towards a particular region. So where is this reconciliation going to start from? That's one on the side. And then in terms of hiring and firing people who do not carry out the job that they were asked to carry out. We know how former President Buhari did. You have people who were given project, and then they said they were going to deliver that project in XYZ date, but they didn't deliver that project, but they came up with excuses. But then he didn't fire them. So how is it going to be for President Tinubu? Is if you don't deliver the job that you were asked to deliver, is he going to kick them out of the stage and then shut the door at them?
See, if you are given targets and you fail to deliver, why would you remain there? He will not spare you. And even Buhari did not spare people. There are people that each other. Buhari is not the sort that will go to town. Buhari, by his nature, was taciturn, was reticent. But there are people who failed to deliver and he fired them. One of which was the power minister, if I remember very well, the Charlie Member, and he's currently cooling his heel, I think, in EFCC detention. Well, the couple.
But you still have some contract that were given to some people that they didn't deliver.
Yeah, I'm just trying to give an example. So it's not totally, but then more could have been kicked out. There are people who fail to deliver certain deliverables. Let me tell you how Bola Tinubu works. He gives you targets. This much, I've never worked on that Tinubu, but I've seen people who have worked under him closely. Some of them are either professional associates or even superiors in the media, and those who also had worked with him and had worked with Buhari. Fashola, for instance, the former Minister of Works, he said, look, he's worked with Tinubu and now he's working with Buhari. And he told Nigerians that Buhari gives you operating room. He gives you the latitude to use their discretion. But Tinubu micromanages people. If he gives you a target, he will come back, bring the checklist. He's the sort that will do that. He will not wait for you to give him a report. So
let's use that same Fashola, for example.
Yes.
If you have, let's say, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, they're supposed to be delivered at a particular time, and then there's an excuse. If he was able to do that with former President Buhari, will same thing happen with President Tinubu?
No, he'll be fired. Fashola said he has been fired so many times as chief of staff. You understand? It's just that people didn't know. Then he'll be fired for, it wasn't public because he has failed to deliver. Tomorrow, he'll ask him to go. He said, but you fired me now. He said in a jocular manner, in an interview. He said, you said, but you fired me. Then, you see, you are rehired again. But what I'm saying now, that's just jocularly stated now. What I'm saying that Tinubu will not allow that.
Okay.
Tinubu certainly will not allow that.
Okay, so before we let you go, let's talk about the reconciliatory mode.
The reconciliation. See, he has done his part. Now, coming to the issue of the leadership of the party, he's made his point very clear that this is the party preferred candidate. That perhaps, more than anything else, there are other elements who say, look, they want to argue that, look, we've given you the number of votes which deserve to have the leadership of the National Assembly. We deserve to be Senate President. Yari from Northwest is running from pillar to post to be President of the Senate. But the party said, no, we've zoned this, not just zoned it to a particular reason, we've micro-zoned it to individuals. That this is who we want. We want Akpabio and the Senate President. And going for Akpabio, more than anything else, is issue of faith. Let's face it.
So now we're talking about faith.
No, we're talking about faith.
I thought we were not talking about faith when it was the Muslim ticket.
No, but you see, what I will say is exactly because of the Muslim ticket. That's why Okpabio will now stand aside. If it were just because now we've won the presidential mandate, the Muslim ticket was for the sole reason to win election. You can't have a southern minority Muslim and pair him with a northern minority Christian, and you think you're going to win election? Election is about numbers. And this is not about faith. If they said it true. But now, it's also about faith, because the optics would not favor a Muslim president, a Muslim vice president, a Muslim senate president. Now we're standing, because we won the presidential mandate. Now we have to be sensible to the sensitivities.
So are you saying that you were not sensible initially during the elections?
What we're saying, winning the presidential election is about numbers.
Okay.
You understand? It's about numbers, and it's impossible to have a southwestern minority Muslim. Listen to this. And then pair him with a northern Christian minority in the north. Largely, north is predominantly, and I'm saying in certain places that you could have, in the north, it predominantly is a Muslim population. You understand? Then you pick somebody from the southwest who is a Muslim minority in the southwest. Some people say it's 50-50. Some people say otherwise. You understand? So now you also have to be sensible enough to say, okay, we won the presidential mandate.
Now let's share it around.
Now, what are the optics? You have Muslim president, number one. You have Muslim president, number two. Then you have a Muslim senate president, number three. Come on. For example, you know my opinion about the Muslim ticket. To me, I had my reservations. But politicians say, look, they are want to win election. And winning election, why did you think Kamala Harris was elected as, running mate too? Because she represents so many interests. Gender, minorities, black, Hispanics. In Kamala Harris, you find all of that.
But then Honorable Idris Wase don't agree to all of this. According to him, he said the consensus that was done is a sham.
Well, of course, there will always be, if you like, somebody who will not toe the line of others. Even better is kicking against it. You understand? There are people who are kicking. Yari, I just give you an example with Yari. But you see, the National Assembly leadership is a totally different kettle of fish. It's not like the general election.
All right.
You understand? This is an election among equals. So you have to do a lot of persuasion. Don't be surprised there could be a dramatic upset, even against the party wishes and aspirations. I'm just telling you the reality of it. It has happened before. The PDP zoned the speakership in 2011 to the southwest. But some other people say nay, led by the likes of Tambuwal. And then Tambuwal, against his party wishes, emerged Speaker of the House of Reps in 2011. This could be another example, but you understand.
All right. Thank you so much. Our time is fast spent. We wish we had enough time to keep making this discussion. Thank you so much for your time with us.
Thank you very much, Annabel. Thank you for letting me prattle.
All right, viewers, that's all we can take today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have been chatting with Ali. He is a member of the Presidential Campaign and Transition Council. It's been a wonderful time here on The Conversation. I'll see you again next time. Keep watching The Conversation. Till I come your way again. From the nation's capital, Abuja, I am Annabel Orji. God bless you and yours. God bless Nigeria.